Let's get started. Tokia, yanareo, miyan kekansan, miwede pana e sona pitoki pona. Hey everyone, I'm Greg Dan3, and today I want to teach you about Toki Pona. Today, we're going to be starting with the basics. So that's going to be Toki Pona's pronouns in this case. There's a lot of different ways you can get started, but this one's especially nice because really the most common thing you're going to be doing when you're speaking language is referring to things. Yourself, somebody you're speaking to, somebody else in the room, or perhaps across the street, or just things you point out. And so, to get started, we'll be looking at me, that's I, and we'll be looking at Sina, S-I-N-A. Me is Toki Pona's first person pronoun. It can refer to yourself. It can refer to a group of people that includes yourself. And it can refer to basically any group that includes yourself. It's not going to worry about being singular or plural. It is yourself. Of course, it is most commonly just yourself. Sorry, I got distracted by somebody typing back there. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate, unless you have like an interruption, like I made a mistake, no typing. It is very distracting, sorry. Okay, continuing. Like I said, me, first person pronoun, refers to yourself. Sina, second person pronoun, refers to who you are speaking to or a group including who you're speaking to. So like y'all, right? You or y'all. And these have just about the simplest grammar when it comes to sentences. So we're going to be looking at sentences that basically just have a verb to start with. Or sorry, that do just have a verb to start with. So I could say, mi Pona, or Sina Pona. Now, if you've literally heard of Toki Pona, you probably know Pona is good, positive, pleasant, any sort of pleasant or positive quality. And so, mi Pona, well, we know that mi is that first person pronoun referring to ourselves. Pona, the verb, so we're describing ourselves or an action we're doing. Mi Pona is, I'm good, I'm well, I'm okay, I'm happy. Any sort of positive quality. And this idea of these words being very, very broad, having many possible meanings per se, that's going to keep coming back. But don't worry, because no matter how broad the words are, when it comes to somebody saying a sentence to you or typing it to you, however they communicate, there's going to be some sort of relatively straightforward meaning behind it. It'll take you time to get used to it, but like when we say the English word fruit, we're not necessarily referring to the concept of fruit. We could be. But like if I say, can I get some fruit? It could be any fruit in particular. It could also be some specific fruit. There's some meaning behind it. That's the idea with all of Toki Pona's words, just about. So, mi Pona, I'm good. Sina Pona, you are good. You are positive. You are pleasant or friendly. And just for reference, mi and Sina here are the subject, and as noted, Pona in both cases is the verb. Again, simplest sort of sentence you can have in Toki Pona. So, clearing that, I'd like to look at a few more examples of sentences with me and Sina, because really, you're going to be saying these a lot. So, we could say, Sina, Toki, mute. Ramping it up a bit, there's 3 words now. Sina, we're referring to the person we're speaking to. So if there's somebody here next to me and I say, Sina, Toki, mute, well, Sina, Toki, mute. Sina, we're referring to them. Toki, as in the name of the language, that is speaking, conversation, or language. And we know it's in the verb here because Sina is our subject right up front. And then mute. Mute is a lot, many, or very. It also can refer to exactly 20 when it comes to numbers. That's way later on, but it can do that. So, Toki mute. Mute is altering Toki. It's making it more specific. It's not just talking, it's a lot of talking. So, Sina Toki mute. You talk a lot. And in response, they might say, Mi sona. Sona is knowledge or understanding. So in this case, me referring to themselves, referring to myself, a first person pronoun. Sona, knowledge or understanding. And so as the verb, that's like, I know, I understand. And maybe you could tell by the bit of exasperation in my voice that this is like, yeah, I get it. You talk a lot. Yeah, I know. Like, come on, I've heard it too many times. More to the point, we have this very straightforward sentence structure, a subject, and then a verb. Again, this is going to come back lots and lots, this structure. But let's continue on to another type of pronoun. Because, of course, there are more things in the world than you and I. There are others. Crazy, right? So, clearing that. Excuse me. The next pronoun is ona. O, in, a. There we go. Ona, O-N-A. Where me and Sina referred to respectively myself and yourself, ona refers to them, any he, she, it, or they, a third person pronoun. And you can tell because where me is a bit like taking your left hand, pointing at yourself with your thumb, and Sina is a bit like taking your right hand and pointing, taking your right hand and pointing outward towards somebody else. Ona is a bit like taking your right hand and pointing to your left, pointing toward something else in the room, or rather someone else in the room. And that's pretty much what these glyphs all do, is point. So, ona, third person pronoun, but how do you use it? Well, it gets a little bit complicated. And by a little bit, I mean you need exactly one more word. And that word is li. Li, L-I, is drawn with this little arrowhead shape pointing to the right. And li is the first of our grammatical particles. It tells us when the verb begins, basically. It gets a little bit more complicated than that, especially as sentences get longer. But that is the critical thing, is knowing that li tells you when the verb begins. Why didn't you do that with me and Sina? Well, saying li with those two all the time would get old. You say me and Sina so much that from a language point of view, waste of time. That's a bit dramatic per se, but it is true. Me and Sina introduce their own verb, but ona does not. Ona needs li. And so let's try one of those sentences from before, but with ona instead. You would say ona, li, pona. Ona, he, she, it, they. Li, we're introducing a verb. Pona, good, positive, pleasant. And so they're good, they're friendly, they're helpful. Again, li introduces a verb, and so in a way, it's actually making this whole thing, this sentence structure, more explicit. There's the verb, there's the subject, and li is just doing his job in the middle. Let's try another one. We could say Pona, li moku. Pona, li moku. So moku is both food and to eat. It's kind of both of those ideas. And so this sentence, Ona li moku, technically it could mean they are hungry, they are eating, or they are food. This is another one of those instances where Toki Pona depends on you, in a sense. You need to bring your own understanding of the world to Toki Pona. Because, yeah, this sentence could mean they are food, but if you think about it reasonably, if I point to somebody in the room and say, Ona li moku, and then you look over and you see them sitting there with a big plate full of noodles, whatever, you're probably not going to assume the sentence means they are food. You use your own understanding of the world and go, oh, Ona li moku, they are eating. And this idea that you bring your own understanding to the world and therefore figure out what these words mean, well, that's pretty much how all the words, again, work. They all have many possible meanings, but if you, with your understanding of the world, hear a given sentence at a given time and place, there are way fewer possibilities for what that sentence means. That's how Toki Pona works. That's how understanding goes from one person to another. And then I'll make a quick note about moku here, this glyph. You might have noticed that all the others I've drawn so far, mi, sina, and ona, are especially pretty simple. Li, very simple. Moku, there's a bit more going on there. Why is that? Well, that's because this glyph is actually drawn of two parts. The first is the glyph for hand, and the second is the glyph for mouth. And if you take a close look, yeah, that seems about right. Can't demonstrate that with mouth, though. Sorry. Those are both symbols that correspond to words of their own as well. They're not going to be in this lesson, but just for your awareness. Right, so thus far we've covered all three of the basic pronouns. We have me, you, and they. So what's next? We have, clear all that. Ni. In, I. So ni refers to this or that. It refers to basically anything you can point out in the way the words this and that and these and those all do. And so, you can use it for basically any situation. Like it does so much heavy lifting. It's unreal. But let's use it in a sentence just to get an idea of what it does. Ni, li, suli. You'll notice I used li here. And that's because, again, while me and Sina introduce their own verb, and li introduces a verb, me and Sina are the only special ones there. Li does the lifting for all the rest of the words. So ni is our subject. This, li, introduces the verb. Suli. Suli is large or important. And it could be any kind of large. It could be tall, wide, deep, right? And then again, important as well. That's a common theme with Toki Pona words in general. They'll take two semi-related concepts and merge them together. As before, you might assume that, oh, it's kind of complicated to tell those apart. But again, with context, no, not so much. Because when I say the sentence in some specific instance, in some specific time or place, there's a lot fewer things it could mean. Like, if you and I walk up to a skyscraper, we're at the foot of it, we look all the way up and we can barely see the tip from where we're standing, and you say, "Nili suli." Well, it's very clear that that means this is huge. This is so tall. And maybe that building is important as well, but in the context, it really does mean large, physically large. Right, so I've harped on suli for a bit, but I've really glossed over ni. Ni, as noted, does basically anything you need. Get it? And so we could refer to really anything we want. Let's try a word you're probably not going to get too much used to when you're starting out. Ni, li, sinpin. So again, we have ni, that is this or that, li, introducing a verb, and sinpin. Sinpin refers to front-facing surfaces, so vertical surfaces. That seems a little abstract, and I'll grant, it really is. But it also refers to the front of things in general, like the front of a home or a car, or your own face, your chest, fronts of things. And I'm actually saying, or rather, using this sentence describing what I'm doing, or more exactly, what I'm interacting with. Ni, as in this board, li, sinpin, is a front-facing surface. And then I could say, continuing to describe what I'm doing, mi, sitelen. Mi, sitelen. So again, we have me, I'm describing myself, so I. Sitelen, that is writing, symbols, characters, alphabets, really symbolic things of many descriptions, especially having to do with writing or representing things. So if I say mi sitelen, and you're actively watching me as I say that, I'm writing on the board, well, that's me saying I am writing. And then another one, in the very context we are in, sina, kute. Sina, kute. Sina is you, the audience. Kute, you might notice that it looks suspiciously like an ear, and that's because it is. Kute refers to both listening and to ears. And so, sina is our subject, kute is our verb, you are listening, the thing you are doing right now. But let's go back to ni, because there's actually more to it that I've glossed over a bit. Clear all that. So I described before that ni can refer to this or that. We gave an example of a skyscraper and of this board, but those are physical things. What if I were to say, me, ni. Me, ni. So me, again, we're referring to ourselves, so I do something. Ni is a verb. What is that doing? What does that mean? Well, there it refers to a verb, something we're interacting with. Like in English, we would say, I did that, or I do this. In Toki Pona, it works basically the same way. The difference is there's just not like a bit of grammatical fluff like do or did that connects this. Because, in English, we can say, I run, no connecting word. But with this and that in English, you do need that bit of connecting word. Well, in Toki Pona, no connecting word. So, me, ni, I do this. But what am I doing? Well, let's imagine a context. Let's say you, no, let's back up. Let's say we're roommates and you come back into the apartment and you look around, some of the chores aren't done, but you're worried about one in particular. You yell out at me, hey, did you take out the trash? Let's imagine you ask that question in Toki Pona. And I might respond, Mini. That would be, I did that. I did this. Yes, I took out the trash. We'll get to asking questions more specifically in the future, but the point I'm trying to make is that ni doesn't have to be a thing, a physical thing. It can also be a verb, an action. And it can be an idea as well. It can do lots of different things. Excuse me. All right. So now that we've gotten through the pronouns, me, sina, ona, and ni, the remainder of the lesson, for about 10 minutes here, is going to be more sentences. Lots and lots of practice. And there's one more bit of grammar I'd like to introduce before we're done here. So, let's say me. Actually, no, let's not do that one. Let me clear that. Let's say ona li pali li lape. Ona li pali li lape. Now this one's fun because we're now introducing two verbs. You can tell because there are two li. But fortunately, the function of them is basically the same as before. So our subject, ona, we're referring to some third person. Li pali. So pali is to work, do, or create. And so this is basically saying ona li pali, they work. And then we have this other li lape. Lape is to sleep, rest, or relax. Have a nice nap, right? And so this first li is saying they work, ona li pali, they work. And the second is saying they rest, ona li lape. The second li is basically how you say and in Toki Pona. That is one of the ways you say it. More generally, and we'll get to it later with more grammatical particles, but more generally, and is said when you double the grammatical particle, excuse me. So in this case, we want to say a person does two things. Ona li pali li lape. They work and rest. Now, it really is that simple as far as this second li goes, but there is one complication. What if you wanted to say this for me or Sina? Well, there are two ways you can go about it. So let's try this sentence as an example and do this for me. We could say, me pali, and then separately, mi lape. And we could also say mi pali li lape. Don't worry, we're not getting too far into the weeds with this. So the first idea here, mi pali, mi lape, is going to be 100% familiar to you already in just this lesson alone. And that's because we're doing exactly what we were doing before with one subject and one verb. We just have two separate sentences. So mi pali, I work. Mi lape, I rest. And if we had both of these sentences side by side, we might translate them back into English as I work and sleep. Or separately, I work, I sleep. We're basically getting across the same information. So what's going on over here? Mi pali li lape. Well, what's going on is that mi introduces a verb, but we can't use mi a second time because, well, I mean, I guess okay, that's a bit disingenuous. You can't use mi a second time like this in the same sentence. The easier way to do this is to introduce a verb with li. This is something that's really easy to overthink. So what I'd recommend is mostly not worrying about it. Basically, mi introduces the first verb, but later ones, li has to introduce them. Either way, though, this sentence means the exact same thing. Mi pali li lape, I work and sleep. Excuse me. All right. So let's continue on to another example. Let me fetch one really quick. Actually, I do have at least one more important thing to introduce before we're done here. Let's say you want to start a conversation. To start a conversation, how do you say hello? Well, in Toki Pona, that is Toki. Remember how Toki is speak, talk, conversation, or language? Well, Toki, all on its own, is how you can say hello. You can think of it in a bit silly way as saying conversation at somebody. And that's pretty much it for saying hello. Excuse me. Okay. But then when you're ending the conversation, what do you say? Well, there are a couple different ways you could say goodbye, but the most common one, and the simplest to understand, is mi tawa. This one's a sentence like we saw before. Me, first person pronoun, ourselves, so I. Tawa. Tawa, as you can see, is a pair of legs moving to the right, and it has to do with motion of any kind. It could be a brisk walk. It could be sprinting. It could be flying or swimming. Any sort of motion. But here, if I want to say goodbye, me tawa literally means I'm going or I'm leaving. And so there you go. Conversation starter, conversation finisher. Although I will have to quickly note, there's a lot of things that I don't have the time to get to in this lesson. Like, how do you ask somebody how they're doing? Or maybe if somebody's leaving, do you say something in response? The answer is yes, you'd wish them well. We'll get to that in the next lesson. But for now, I think the most important thing is to get to more sentence examples. So we're going to do a couple more of those, and then we're going to call it good. Okay. Let's say you ask a friend for some advice. You've been kind of, I don't know, struggling in school, and you're trying to figure out how to make your day more productive. And they think on it for a moment, and they say something genuinely very useful that you hadn't thought about before. You might say in response, Ni, li, sona, pona. Ni, so referring to this or that. Li, introducing a verb. Sona, to know or understand. And pona, good, positive, pleasant. Which is, again, making sona more specific. So altogether, ni, li, sona, pona. This is good information. It's good knowledge. Where this, of course, refers to that advice you just got. All right, and then another one. Ona, li, tawa, nasa. Ona, li, tawa, nasa. All right, that one, ona is our third person pronoun. So he, she, it, they. Li introduces a verb. Tawa, motion, movement. Nasa, it has a spiral shape, and it refers to things being strange, confusing, or unusual. So, tawa nasa is a strange kind of movement. So, let's say you and a couple of friends are... You're at a theme park, and you've just gotten off a roller coaster. You look over at one of your friends, and they don't look too good. They're shaking around a bit. They look a little pale. You're worried about them. And so you grab the friend standing next to you, and you point at the friend who doesn't feel well, and you say, "Onari tawa nasa." They are moving strangely. Which, of course, is your way of saying, at least in this context, with the information, with the words we know and the grammar we know so far, you're worried about them. You think you should do something about it, right? Ona li tawa nasa, they're moving strangely. Something is wrong. All right, and one more sentence and we'll call it good. Let's say let's say we have two sentences actually, just to make it a little quick. Sina kute pona mi sona. All right. So let's imagine that you've gone out to see, I don't know, a theatrical performance. Maybe a musical even. And you listen very closely to the different voice parts, to all the things going on, to the details in the story, and you come up with this incredible insight about what the story's trying to get across. And you lean over to your friend who's come with you, and you're like, "Hey, did you notice this?" And they say to you, "Oh, sina kute pona." Sina is referring to you, kute is to listen, and pona is good or positive. So, sina kute pona, you listen well. And you're a little smug about it. So you go, "Mi sona." All right, that's all I had. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was a good beginner lesson for y'all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the Discord.